Ne di quaso ayudar la joven paralyzada, haste que ele. Her small town was quiet and everyone knew each other. Maria worked at a local bakery, and every day she greeted her neighbors with a warm smile. She had dreams, simple ones really. She wanted to save enough money to travel to the mountains she had admired since childhood, to see the sunrise from the highest peaks. She wanted to live a life full of little joys, of friendship and laughter. She never imagined that all of it could change in an instant. One sunny afternoon, Maria decided to take a walk to the park nearby. It was her favorite place, where the flowers bloomed in bright colors and children played freely. She walked slowly, enjoying the warmth of the sun and the calmness around her. She was thinking about the fresh bread she would bake later and how she might decorate it with new designs. Suddenly, a loud noise broke the quiet. A car skidded on the wet road nearby, and before she could react, it struck her. Pain exploded through her body. She tried to move, but she could not. Her legs refused to respond. Panic filled her chest as fear and confusion took over. People screamed and ran around, but no one came close to help her. Maria's mind raced. She tried to call for help, shouting as loud as she could, but the chaos around her seemed to swallow her voice. Some people looked at her and hurried away. Others whispered to each other, shaking their heads, saying things like, "It's too dangerous," or "Someone else will help her." She felt a sharp sting of loneliness. Her body was trapped, and so was her hope. Tears ran down her face as she realized that even in a crowd, she was completely alone. After what felt like hours, a few passers-by finally called the ambulance, but it would take time to arrive. Meanwhile, Maria lay there, unable to move, unable to do anything. Her thoughts wandered to her family, but most of them lived far away. She imagined telling them what had happened, but the thought made her heart ache even more. How could she explain her life had changed so suddenly? How could she accept the reality of her paralysis? Each passing minute felt heavier than the last. Her mind was filled with fear, but also a desperate hope that someone, anyone, would stay with her, would offer a hand, a word, a sign that she was not invisible. When the ambulance finally arrived, Maria expected someone to help her with care, to speak gently, to ease her fear. But the paramedics were in a rush, attending to multiple emergencies. They were kind but practical, moving her quickly onto a stretcher. In the hospital, she was wheeled into a cold room filled with unfamiliar smells and sharp lights. Doctors and nurses rushed in and out, speaking in terms she could barely understand. They explained the damage to her spine, telling her she might not be able to walk again. The words felt like heavy stones dropping into her chest. Maria's mind tried to grasp the reality, but the fear of losing her independence made her feel hollow inside. Days passed, and Maria realized that her world had changed entirely. She could not go outside as she once had. She could not visit the bakery or meet her friends. Every task that once seemed simple now required effort she did not have. She depended on others for almost everything, eating, bathing, moving from one place to another. Yet despite being surrounded by people, she felt more alone than ever. Some nurses were kind, some were rushed. Some visitors came out of pity, but they did not stay long. The reality of her isolation began to weigh heavily on her heart. Maria tried to reach out, hoping someone would understand. She asked for help when she needed it, only to be met with excuses. "We are busy," some would say. Others would shake their heads and leave without offering more than a fleeting glance. She began to notice a pattern. People avoided her not out of malice, but out of fear and discomfort. They did not know how to interact with someone in her condition. They were not cruel, but their indifference felt just as painful. Maria's heart ached not only for the loss of her mobility, but also for the absence of human kindness that had once been so common in her small town. At night, when the hospital was quiet, Maria stared at the ceiling. The shadows from the lamps cast strange patterns across the room. She thought about her dreams, her small joys, and the life she had known. Was it all gone? Would she ever walk again or even live independently? The questions haunted her. She felt trapped in a body that no longer responded and in a world that seemed unwilling to bend to her needs. Sleep often eluded her, and when it came, it was filled with restless dreams of falling, of being left behind, of calling out and receiving no reply. Yet even in the depth of her despair, a small spark of hope remained. Maria thought about her own strength. She had always faced challenges, small and large, and had overcome them. Maybe this would be no different. Maybe someone would come. Maybe someone would see her, truly see her, and offer help not out of obligation but out of care. This tiny hope, fragile as it was, became her lifeline in the lonely nights. As the days slowly turned into a week, Maria's routine became one of quiet observation. She watched the nurses moving from room to room, the hospital staff busy with their duties, and visitors hurrying in and out. Each moment of silence became a reminder of her solitude. Yet she also began to notice small gestures. A nurse adjusting her pillow just right, a janitor giving a small smile, another patient sharing a story. These little moments were like tiny drops of water in a desert, giving her the strength to breathe, to endure, to wait for something more. Maria's life had changed forever, but she had not given up completely. She still dreamed of walking again, of feeling the grass under her feet, of seeing the sunrise from her favorite hill. Her body was fragile, but her spirit was quietly resilient. She knew that someone somewhere might appear, someone who would not turn away, someone who would offer a hand, a smile, a lifeline. And so she waited, with patience she did not know she possessed, holding on to that small but powerful hope that life, even after tragedy, could still bring kindness and light into her world. Days passed, and Maria's life remained difficult. The initial shock of her accident had worn off, but it was replaced by a deep sense of frustration. Her body was confined to a hospital bed or a wheelchair, and she relied entirely on others for the most basic tasks. Each morning she woke with the hope that today might be different, that someone might notice her, that someone might help her, but the hope slowly collided with reality. She tried reaching out to people around her. She spoke to the nurses, asking if someone could assist her to move a little outside her room, or if she could see a visitor for a short while. Some nodded politely but never returned. Others said they were too busy, that other patients needed them more. She watched the nurses hurry past her room, delivering medicine, pushing carts, answering calls. She understood that their work was hard, but it did not make the feeling of being ignored any easier. Every day she felt like she was fading into the background. Visitors came occasionally, mostly family members who lived far away. Their visits were short, filled with awkward conversations and gestures of pity. They tried to cheer her up with words like, "You'll get through this," or "Be strong," but Maria could sense the distance in their eyes. They did not know how to truly help her. Their words, though well-meaning, felt empty. They left as quickly as they came, leaving Maria alone once again in the quiet hospital room. The sense of loneliness grew heavier with each passing day. Outside the hospital, the world seemed to continue without pause. Maria could hear the laughter of children from the park nearby, the sounds of the bakery where she once worked, the chatter of people in the streets. She remembered walking freely in those places, feeling the sun on her face, and suddenly she realized how much she had taken for granted. Now, everything was distant. Every sound reminded her of the life she could no longer live independently. She felt trapped, not just in her body, but in a world that seemed unwilling to bend to her needs. Maria also noticed the reactions of strangers. When she was moved in her wheelchair through the hospital corridors, some people looked away, pretending not to notice her. Others whispered to each other, perhaps uncomfortable with her condition. Some even avoided passing by her room altogether. Maria tried not to take it personally, but it was hard. She could feel the coldness, the discomfort, and the avoidance. The indifference of the world around her made the accident feel even more cruel. It was not only her body that had been injured. The warmth of human kindness seemed to be absent as well. Even within the hospital, Maria struggled to get help. She tried calling for assistance when she needed to go to the bathroom or when she wanted to adjust her position in bed. Sometimes the call button worked, and a nurse came quickly, smiling and helping her. Other times she pressed it again and again, waiting for someone who never arrived. The minutes stretched endlessly. She learned to endure small pains quietly, to adjust as best she could to survive the waiting. Yet each time she had to wait for help, a small part of her hope dimmed. She also faced small humiliations that weighed heavily on her spirit. Tasks that had once seemed trivial, eating, washing her hair, moving her arms or legs, now required assistance from strangers. Maria hated feeling so dependent. She hated the sensation of needing someone else for everything. She wanted to be strong, to regain her independence, but the reality of her body's limitations reminded her constantly that strength alone was not enough. There were moments when tears streamed down her face, not from physical pain, but from the frustration and helplessness that had settled deep in her heart. Despite the indifference she faced, Maria tried to stay positive. She reminded herself that people had busy lives, that they might not know how to help someone in her condition. She told herself that her situation was temporary, that she would find a way to adjust, to adapt. She read books to pass the time. She practiced small exercises that the physiotherapist had taught her, and she kept a small journal to record her thoughts and feelings. But the journal, as comforting as it was, could not replace human interaction. She longed for someone who would see her as a person, not just a patient. Someone who would care without obligation, who would understand her fear and her hope, her pain and her dreams. Maria's loneliness was not only emotional but practical as well. Simple tasks like getting dressed, moving to the bathroom, or even drinking water required help. The hospital provided what it could, but the staff were stretched thin. Volunteers were rare, and many of the visitors were unwilling or unable to stay. Maria noticed that the people who did try to help often left when it became difficult or uncomfortable. Their smiles faded, their patience ran out, and she was left once again to manage as best she could. The repeated disappointments made her wary, cautious, and even afraid to ask for help. She did not want to bother anyone. She did not want to be a burden. There were moments when Maria questioned herself. She wondered why life had been so cruel, why her accident had happened, and why the world seemed unwilling to care. Sometimes she blamed herself for expecting too much from others. Other times, she blamed fate, the randomness of the accident, the misfortune that had befallen her. Yet through it all, a small flame of resilience burned quietly inside her. She did not give up entirely. She remembered the joy she had once felt in small things, the taste of fresh bread, the smell of flowers, the sound of a friend's laughter. She clung to those memories, using them as a reminder that life could still hold goodness. Maria also tried to connect with other patients in the hospital. She spoke to those who were recovering from illness or surgery, hoping to find companionship. Some listened politely but were too focused on their own struggles to offer much support. Others were indifferent, wrapped up in their own fears and frustrations. Still, Maria continued to try. She wanted to believe that human kindness existed, that there were people who would not turn away, no matter how difficult it was to help. She held on to this belief, even as the days passed slowly, almost unbearably. Even though the world seemed indifferent, Maria found small moments of courage. She practiced tiny exercises to strengthen her arms, to move her fingers, to prepare for the day when she might regain some independence. She set small goals for herself, like lifting a cup without help or adjusting her blanket. Each tiny success, though minor in the eyes of others, felt like a victory to her. These moments reminded her that even when people ignored her, she still had herself, and she could still fight for the life she wanted. But the hardest part of all was the waiting. Waiting for help, waiting for someone to notice her, waiting for life to return to some form of normalcy. Maria felt time stretch endlessly, each day blending into the next. She learned to observe the small details, the flicker of sunlight through the window, the quiet humming of machines, the soft footsteps in the hallway. These small observations became her companions in the lonely hours. Yet in the depths of her heart, she longed for more than observations. She longed for action, for care, for someone who would not just see her but truly notice her. Maria's hope was fragile, but it was still alive. She imagined a person who would come into her life, someone patient, kind, and strong enough to face her struggles alongside her. She imagined someone who would offer help not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. She pictured someone who would listen to her fears, celebrate her small victories, and stand by her even when it was difficult. This vision became a quiet motivation for her, a reason to endure, to survive, and to keep believing in the possibility of kindness. And so Maria waited. Days passed into weeks, and the world around her continued on its busy, indifferent path. Yet she remained patient, holding onto the hope that someone, anyone, would appear. She had faced indifference, isolation, and frustration, but she had not given up entirely. Deep inside, she knew that life could change again. That help could come, and that she might find someone who would not turn away, who would see her not as a burden, but as a person worthy of care and attention. Even as the loneliness pressed down on her, Maria's heart remained open. She knew that human kindness was rare, but she believed it existed. She believed that one day someone would step forward, offering not just assistance, but hope, companionship, and understanding. And until that day arrived, she would continue to wait, to endure, and to nurture the fragile flame of hope that kept her spirit alive. Maria had been waiting for weeks, clinging to hope that someone would come, that someone would truly see her. She had grown tired of the indifference, the hurried steps of nurses, the polite but fleeting smiles of visitors. Her life had become a series of quiet routines, broken only by the arrival of medicine or the occasional sound of laughter from the hallway. She often wondered if kindness still existed in the world, if there was anyone who could look beyond her paralysis and see her as a person with dreams, fears, and hopes. One quiet afternoon, a man appeared in the hospital. His name was Daniel, and unlike others, he seemed to move with purpose. He was not in a hurry, but he was calm, observant, and gentle in his approach. Daniel worked with a small charity that helped people with disabilities regain some independence. He visited hospitals, offering guidance, support, and friendship to those who were struggling. That day, he had come to check on new patients, and his eyes fell on Maria as he entered the room. She was sitting by the window, staring outside with a mixture of sadness and longing. Daniel paused for a moment, studying her quietly. He noticed the quiet despair in her eyes, the way her hands rested helplessly on her lap. Most people would have walked by, offering a brief greeting or ignoring her entirely, but Daniel did not. He walked slowly toward her with a gentle smile on his face. "Hello," he said softly. "My name is Daniel. I work with people who are learning to live with challenges like yours. May I sit with you for a while?" Maria blinked in surprise. She had not expected anyone to speak to her with such calm kindness. Most visitors rushed in and out, their words fleeting, their gestures small and unhelpful. But Daniel's presence felt different. There was no pity in his eyes, no awkward discomfort. There was simply a quiet willingness to be there, to listen, and to help. For the first time in weeks, Maria felt a flicker of hope. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaky. She had grown unused to talking to someone who cared. Daniel moved her wheelchair closer to the window and sat beside her. He did not touch her or speak too much at first. He simply waited, allowing Maria to feel that she was seen, that she was acknowledged. For Maria, this simple act was profound. It was the first time in days that she did not feel invisible. After a few minutes, Daniel began to speak gently. "I know things must be very hard for you right now," he said. "It can be frightening to lose the ability to do what you used to. But I want you to know that you are not alone. There are ways we can help you regain strength, independence, and hope." Maria listened, unsure if she could trust anyone so easily. She had been disappointed too many times. She had hoped for help and been ignored, left to struggle on her own. But there was something different about Daniel. His words were calm and steady, not rushed or hollow. He seemed patient, willing to take the time to understand her fears and offer guidance. Over the next few days, Daniel returned to see Maria regularly. Each visit brought small changes. He taught her simple exercises to strengthen her arms and hands, showed her ways to adjust her wheelchair for comfort, and most importantly, listened to her. He encouraged her to speak about her dreams, her fears, and her frustrations. Maria realized that this was unlike any interaction she had experienced before. Daniel did not judge her for needing help. He did not hurry her or dismiss her concerns. He simply offered support, patiently and consistently. Daniel also helped Maria navigate the hospital environment. He showed her how to ask for assistance politely but firmly, how to communicate her needs to nurses without feeling like a burden. He explained small strategies to manage daily tasks, from eating to moving between her bed and wheelchair. Each lesson gave Maria a sense of control she had not felt since the accident. She began to realize that she could adapt, that her life could still hold moments of independence and dignity. As days turned into weeks, Maria's trust in Daniel grew. She found herself looking forward to his visits, not only for the practical help he offered but for the warmth of his presence. He did not treat her as fragile or helpless. Instead, he treated her as a person capable of learning, growing, and facing challenges. Maria began to feel a spark of confidence returning, a quiet determination that perhaps she could regain some of the life she had lost. One afternoon, Daniel suggested taking Maria outside for a short time. He explained that fresh air and sunlight could lift her spirits and help her physical recovery. Maria felt nervous at first. She had not been outside since the accident. The thought of moving through the hospital corridors, of being seen by others, filled her with fear. But Daniel's calm reassurance helped her feel safe. He guided her wheelchair carefully, spoke softly, and never rushed her. For the first time in weeks, Maria felt the warmth of the sun on her face, smelled the flowers from the garden, and heard the chirping of birds. The world outside felt alive, welcoming, and full of possibilities. Daniel's presence was transformative. He showed Maria that help could be offered without judgment, without inconvenience, and without pity. He taught her that kindness could be consistent, that human connection could exist even in difficult circumstances. Maria began to notice subtle changes within herself. She felt stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. She began to believe that her accident did not have to define her entire life. She could adapt, learn, and even find joy in small moments again. Through Daniel, Maria also learned the value of patience. Recovery, both physical and emotional, was not instant. There were good days and bad days. Some exercises were difficult and progress was slow. Yet, Daniel's unwavering support helped her face each challenge with courage. He celebrated every small victory with her, from lifting her hand without help to adjusting her wheelchair independently. Each moment built her confidence and reminded her that she was capable, that she had strength within her, even in a body that felt limited. Maria also discovered that Daniel's help went beyond physical support. He listened to her fears about the future, her worries about being a burden, and her sadness over lost independence. He encouraged her to express her emotions freely, without shame or embarrassment. This emotional support was as important as the physical guidance. Maria realized that having someone who truly listened, who cared without condition, was a gift she had longed for but never expected to receive. As time went on, Maria began to see life differently. She no longer felt completely trapped in her paralysis. With Daniel's help, she learned to navigate her environment, communicate her needs, and celebrate small achievements. Each day brought new lessons, new victories, and new hope. The despair that had once filled her hospital room began to fade, replaced by a quiet determination to reclaim her life, one step at a time. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maria looked at Daniel and smiled. She felt gratitude she could barely express. Not only had he helped her physically, but he had restored her belief in human kindness. She no longer felt entirely alone. Someone had come into her life who saw her as more than her disability, who believed in her potential, and who offered care without hesitation or judgment. That evening, Maria understood something important. Even in the darkest moments, hope could arrive in the form of a single person willing to make a difference. With Daniel's support, Maria's life slowly began to change. Each day was filled with small victories, lessons, and moments of hope. She was learning to move her wheelchair with more ease, to perform small tasks independently, and to regain confidence in herself. Daniel encouraged her every step of the way, patiently guiding her, never rushing, never judging. For Maria, his presence was more than help. It was a lifeline that reminded her she could face challenges without being completely alone. Every morning, Daniel arrived with a calm energy that seemed to lift the room. He brought exercises that strengthened her arms and upper body, taught her techniques to manage simple movements, and showed her how to adjust her wheelchair for comfort and mobility. Maria learned to reach for objects, hold utensils, and even transfer from her bed to the wheelchair with his guidance. Each new skill, though small, felt monumental. The sense of accomplishment sparked confidence in Maria that she had not felt since before her accident. Beyond the physical lessons, Daniel helped Maria navigate her emotions. She had spent weeks feeling trapped, frustrated, and invisible, and he understood that recovery was not just about movement, but about rebuilding a sense of self. He encouraged her to speak freely about her fears, her sadness, and her hopes. Sometimes Maria would cry, overwhelmed by memories of her old life and the challenges of her new reality. Daniel listened patiently, offering comfort through words and presence. He reminded her that emotions were part of the healing process and that acknowledging them was a sign of strength, not weakness. One of the biggest changes Maria noticed was her renewed sense of independence. She started to take control of her daily routines. With Daniel's guidance, she learned how to prepare simple meals, manage her personal care, and organize her room for easier access to things she needed. Each time she completed a task without relying entirely on someone else, her heart swelled with pride. These moments were proof that she could still live a meaningful life, even with her limitations. But progress was not always easy. There were days when Maria felt exhausted, frustrated, or discouraged. Some exercises were painful, and sometimes her body refused to cooperate. On those days, she would slump in her wheelchair, feeling defeated. Daniel never forced her to continue. Instead, he offered encouragement, adjusting the exercises or giving her space to rest. He reminded her that recovery was a journey, full of ups and downs, and that every small effort counted. Maria began to understand that setbacks did not mean failure. They were part of the process, and resilience came from continuing despite challenges. Together, they faced obstacles beyond the hospital walls. Once, Daniel suggested a short trip outside to practice navigating ramps and pathways in the city. Maria hesitated, worried about how people would look at her or whether she could manage the streets. But Daniel stayed beside her, guiding her wheelchair carefully, offering encouragement and helping her plan each step. The outing was not perfect. There were bumps and difficulties, but Maria felt exhilarated by the experience. For the first time in months, she felt connected to the world outside, capable of interacting with it rather than being confined by it. Daniel also encouraged Maria to think about her dreams again. He asked her what she wanted to achieve despite her paralysis, and he helped her find ways to make it possible. They spoke about her love for walking in nature, and Daniel suggested adaptive equipment and techniques that could allow her to explore small trails safely. They discussed her passion for baking and how she could continue to create, adjusting her kitchen to her needs. These conversations were transformative. Maria realized that her dreams did not have to die, they only needed to adapt. Through these efforts, Maria's confidence grew. She began to speak more openly with hospital staff, requesting help when necessary without feeling like a burden. She noticed that when she expressed herself calmly and clearly, people responded more positively. Daniel had taught her not just physical skills, but also the importance of communication and advocacy for herself. Maria began to understand that even in a world that had once seemed indifferent, she had the power to influence her own experience. Maria also built small connections with others around her. Inspired by Daniel's kindness, she began to offer encouragement to other patients. Sometimes, she shared tips she had learned about handling challenges or comforted someone who was struggling. She found that helping others, even in small ways, brought a sense of purpose and joy that had been missing from her life. The hospital, once a place of loneliness, slowly began to feel more like a community. Maria discovered that kindness could ripple outward. When someone treated you with care, it inspired you to care for others in return. As weeks passed, Daniel introduced more advanced exercises to help Maria build strength. He taught her to transfer independently from her wheelchair to a specially adapted chair for stretching, to practice balancing her upper body, and even to attempt small movements of her legs with support. Each exercise was challenging, but Maria faced them with determination. She celebrated every small improvement, every moment of progress, and Daniel celebrated with her. These victories, though tiny to an outsider, were monumental in Maria's journey. One of the most important lessons Maria learned during this time was patience. Recovery and adaptation required more than physical strength. They required emotional resilience. There were moments when she felt impatient, wishing she could move faster, regain more independence, or return fully to her old life. Daniel reminded her that change takes time, and that progress, no matter how slow, is still progress. Maria began to embrace this mindset, finding peace in small steps rather than focusing solely on distant goals. Daniel also helped Maria plan for her future beyond the hospital. They discussed her return home, how to adapt her living space for accessibility, and ways to continue her physical exercises independently. He connected her with resources and support networks, ensuring she would not feel abandoned once she left the hospital. Maria realized that his guidance extended far beyond temporary assistance. He was helping her build a foundation for a meaningful life, regardless of her physical limitations. Through it all, their bond grew stronger. Maria trusted Daniel not only as a guide, but as a friend who genuinely cared about her well-being. She no longer felt the isolation that had once weighed heavily on her heart. His presence reminded her that she was valued, that her life had purpose, and that challenges could be faced with support, patience, and determination. Daniel's unwavering encouragement helped Maria see herself not as a victim, but as a resilient young woman capable of adapting, learning, and even thriving despite her circumstances. One afternoon, after a particularly challenging exercise session, Maria looked at Daniel and smiled. "I never thought I could feel this strong again," she said quietly. Daniel smiled back. "Strength isn't just in your body," he replied. "It's in your mind, your heart, and your will to keep going. You've had that all along." Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in months, she truly believed it. She believed that life, though different, could still be full of purpose, joy, and hope. As the days turned into months, Maria continued to make steady progress. She could move her wheelchair confidently, perform many tasks independently, and even engage with others in ways that had seemed impossible after her accident. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to grow and learn. With Daniel by her side, Maria faced each moment with courage, determination, and an ever-strengthening sense of hope. Maria's journey in Part 4 is one of transformation. She is no longer just a young woman trapped by her circumstances. She is an active participant in her own recovery, learning to navigate life with resilience, patience, and growing independence. The support, guidance, and friendship of Daniel are central to this transformation, showing how a single person's kindness and patience can help someone rebuild their life. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Maria had come a long way since her accident. The young woman who once lay in a hospital bed, feeling invisible and helpless, was no longer the same. With Daniel's constant guidance, patience, and care, she had learned to navigate the challenges of her life. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more independent. Each day brought new possibilities, small victories, and the quiet joy of reclaiming a life that once seemed lost. Maria's physical strength had improved remarkably. She could move her wheelchair with ease, transfer herself from her bed to the chair, and perform many daily tasks without assistance. She still faced challenges, of course, and some days were harder than others, but she had learned not to fear them. Instead, she approached each obstacle with a calm determination. Daniel continued to teach her, guiding her through exercises and techniques that built endurance and skill. Together, they celebrated each achievement, no matter how small. These celebrations were not just about physical progress. They were about hope, resilience, and the courage to continue moving forward. Beyond physical recovery, Maria had grown emotionally stronger as well. She had learned to accept her new reality without losing hope. She understood that life would be different from what it had been, but it could still be fulfilling, meaningful, and full of joy. Daniel's support had helped her see that independence was not only about walking or doing tasks alone. It was also about having the confidence to face the world, express her needs, and believe in her own strength. One of the most remarkable changes was how Maria interacted with others. She had once felt invisible, ignored by people who didn't know how to help her. Now, she began to form connections, small but meaningful. She spoke with hospital staff, volunteers, and other patients with confidence. She shared her experiences and offered encouragement to those who were struggling. Maria had learned that human kindness could create ripples. When someone treated you with care, it inspired you to care for others in return. Her life, once isolated and lonely, was slowly becoming connected to the world around her again. Daniel remained by her side throughout this journey. His presence had been a constant source of strength, guidance, and reassurance. He helped Maria set new goals, ones that extended beyond the hospital walls. They discussed her future at home, how she could continue practicing exercises, and ways to adapt her living space for maximum independence. Daniel also helped Maria plan for activities that brought her joy, like baking, writing in her journal, and spending time outdoors. With each plan, Maria felt more in control of her life and more hopeful about the future. One bright morning, Daniel suggested something that made Maria's heart race with excitement and nervousness. "How about we try a short visit to the park where you used to walk?" he asked gently. Maria's eyes widened. She had not been outside since the accident, and the thought of leaving the hospital filled her with both fear and hope. Daniel smiled reassuringly. I'll be with you every step of the way. You don't have to worry. We'll take it slow and we'll enjoy every moment." The day of the park visit arrived. Maria felt a mix of emotions, excitement, anxiety, and a quiet determination. With Daniel by her side, she maneuvered her wheelchair carefully down the hospital corridors, through the doors, and into the sunlight. The warmth of the sun on her face, the gentle breeze, and the scent of flowers overwhelmed her senses in the best possible way. For the first time in months, Maria felt alive in a way she hadn't imagined possible since her accident. She smiled, tears forming at the corners of her eyes as she took in the familiar sights and sounds of the park. Daniel helped Maria find a comfortable spot under a large tree where the sunlight filtered gently through the leaves. They sat together, talking quietly, sharing stories, and simply enjoying the peaceful moment. Maria realized that life could still hold beauty, even in the midst of challenges. She had feared that her world was over, that her dreams were lost, and that happiness was beyond her reach. Yet here she was, experiencing a moment of true joy, supported by someone who had believed in her when others had turned away. The experience of returning to the park became a turning point for Maria. It reminded her that her life was not defined by her accident, but by how she chose to live it. She began to make plans for her future, plans that included independence, joy, and connection with others. Daniel helped her explore ways to pursue her passions despite her limitations. They discussed adaptive equipment for walking short paths, tools for baking in her kitchen at home, and ways to continue practicing physical therapy exercises. Maria's dreams, once put on hold, were now possibilities waiting to be realized. With time, Maria's family became more involved in her recovery. They were amazed at her progress and inspired by the transformation they witnessed. Visits became more frequent and supportive, as family members learned how to assist her effectively and offer encouragement. Maria felt a renewed sense of connection with them, strengthened by the confidence and skills she had gained with Daniel's help. She realized that her journey was not just about personal recovery. It was also about rebuilding relationships and creating a supportive network around her. Maria's story began to inspire others in the hospital as well. Other patients and visitors saw her determination, her courage, and the support she received from Daniel. Many were moved by the example of how one person's kindness and patience could transform a life. Some volunteers and staff even asked Daniel for advice on how to provide better support to those in need. Maria realized that her recovery was creating ripples of hope and kindness in ways she had never expected. Through it all, Daniel remained a steady presence. He celebrated Maria's victories, offered comfort during setbacks, and reminded her of her strength when she doubted herself. Their bond had grown deep, not just of friendship, but of mutual respect, trust, and care. Daniel had shown Maria that support could be unwavering, that kindness could be consistent, and that human connection could make a profound difference in someone's life. Maria, in turn, had grown resilient, hopeful, and capable of facing life with courage and determination. As months continued, Maria's independence flourished. She could move about her home with the help of a wheelchair, manage personal tasks with minimal assistance, and even pursue hobbies that brought her joy. Baking became her creative outlet, and she shared her creations with friends, family, and neighbors. Each cake, each pastry, was a symbol of her perseverance and triumph over adversity. Maria's life, once limited by fear and paralysis, was now filled with possibility, purpose, and connection. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Maria looked back on the journey she had traveled. From the moment of her accident, through the loneliness, the despair, and the indifference of the world, to the arrival of Daniel and the transformation that followed, she realized how far she had come. She felt gratitude for the small victories, the moments of learning, and the steady presence of someone who truly cared. Her heart was filled with hope, and a quiet joy that she had thought lost forever. Maria understood that life would always have challenges, but she also knew that she was strong enough to face them. She had learned that independence was not only about physical ability, but also about resilience, hope, and the courage to ask for help when needed. She had learned that human kindness could appear when least expected, and that it could change a life in ways that words alone could never describe. In the end, Maria's story was not just one of recovery, but of hope, courage, and the power of compassion. It was a story of how one person's willingness to help, to listen, and to care could transform despair into possibility, loneliness into connection, and fear into strength. Maria had discovered that even after tragedy, life could hold joy, independence, and love. And for that, she would always be grateful, not only for what she had regained, but for the person who had shown her that hope could arrive when it was needed most.